Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Honor to the Sublime One, the Worthy One, the Fully Enlightened One. So welcome. I see everybody I know, except for Brother Manolo. I don't think I've met you before. And so I'll give an introduction. My name is Jayantha. I'm a 36-year-old lay Buddhist disciple of the Theravada tradition. I'm not a monk, hopefully yet. I'm not a master, I'm not a guru, anything like that. I am just a lay Buddhist disciple. I've been practicing Buddhism for about 6 or 7 years now, and I've been on staff here doing a variety of different things for about a little over 2 years. So what we do here usually is a Dhamma talk, somewhat in the traditional way of how we have a beginning section where I talk, and the last half of the hour is a question and answer / discussion. Usually when a monk talks, you are asked to hold your questions till after he's done. But since I don't care to hear myself blab on for a half hour or more, if you have any comments or questions at any time, don't feel like you're interrupting. Feel free to make a comment, ask a question, and I'll try to respond as best as I can. So I wanted to talk today about something that's an interesting topic for Buddhism. It's something that some people have issues with. It's something that is seen a little bit differently depending on the traditions and depending on the country. But it's, I guess the coin word for it now is socially engaged Buddhism. And what is this socially engaged Buddhism? Well, I think it comes from the perception. If there was not this first perception, then there wouldn't have been a desire for somebody to say, I want socially engaged Buddhism. I think there's this perception that in Buddhism, you practice to kind of leave the world, to renounce the world. And that's true for some. That's true mostly for monastics. But as you may know, if you know Bhikkhu Bodhi, who's a very famous monastic in the Theravada tradition, he started a organization called Buddhist Global Relief that goes around the world, and basically it's an educational organization. It teaches sustainable farming to people in a variety of different of countries. So even a monk can do something. But I think when we talk about social engagement, there's a variety of different aspects to it. And I'll be using a lot of my own personal experience to kind of talk about it. My history, I've always been, from a young age, I've always been very big into the truth, very big into justice, and how things should be, the right way things should be. This led me to, as an adult, becoming politically active. I had always been pretty knowledgeable and kept up, even as a teenager, on the news and all these kind of things. I always kept myself informed. And when I was an adult, I decided to take it to the next step. I joined a party. I became political. I joined the Libertarian Party, which is not Republicans or Democrats. But this is not a political talk. This is a Dhamma talk. So I joined this party because I wanted to make change. I wanted to try to do something. I wanted to educate people of their rights and try to better things. And now 6 years later, I'm about to become a monk, quote unquote, hopefully. So where did that go? What happened in those 6 years between somebody who, at one point, I was the chairperson for literally half of my state. That's how involved that I became in politics. I was extremely involved. I hit the street a lot, talked to people a lot, all these kind of things, trying to see what I can change. And now, I'm renouncing the world by November, if all goes well. So what happened there? Well, what I can say is Buddhist practice happened. And this is where I kind of have this intersection with this topic of social engagement. I've seen it, I've done it. If you are wise, you do not have political views, or at least you don't talk to them. You don't talk about politics as a monk. If you are very wise. There are some monks that say some things. For me personally, Bhikkhu Bodhi is a little too much political. I like one of my teachers, hopefully Bhante Silananda, at Bhavana Society. He says, I will talk to you about anything related to Dhamma. If it's not related to Dhamma, then I have no opinion. I have no. I don't talk about it, and I kind of like that. I think because even though I've gone through, like I was going back to how my practice has changed my worldview, I still have a lot of those old political views, and they can get me into trouble because I don't like talking about politics with Buddhists, because many Buddhists come from a certain type, a certain view, and if you're different from that view, some doesn't matter, some it does. Politics. What do they say about family and friends? Never talk about politics and religion. So it's a dangerous thing. But yeah, that's why the far majority of monks do not profess any political view. You see it a lot in the. You see it a lot more in the Buddhist countries. If you're looking at the news, Thailand, there's a lot of issues. Monks are involved. Sri Lanka, there's a lot of issues. Monks are involved. Tibet, there's a lot of issues. Monks are involved. So there are cultures where this is common, or at least not necessarily uncommon. Traditional Buddhists as being conservative. I don't know if they mean that way in terms of like American politics. I think it's just more conservative in terms of being very strict with what they follow. In terms of following the specific suttas, the specific, ways of doing things. Like the Theravadins are widely considered to be the oldest sect. And, they have supposedly, quote unquote, the oldest texts. So you might say conservative, they only follow the oldest text, they only do this, they only do that. But conservative and liberal are tough terms, because if you take them out of politics, then there's a question of, well, what is it? So I think the better word is orthodox. That makes more sense, because in all the different religions you have Orthodox Jews, you have Orthodox Christians, you have Orthodox Hindus. So orthodox is probably a better word to use in that case than conservative. And Momoko, I would just to answer your question, the majority view that I talked about before was left-leaning. It's been my experience that the far majority of Buddhists have a left-leaning view, and that that has caused me a little bit of trouble in the past. But very, very few Buddhists have a far-right view, which that's just the way it is. Although I did. One of the lay supporters, who's a Sri Lankan for Bhavana Society, I did see I think it's a Romney sticker. That surprised me. I was like, whoa. So I was happy. It's good to see that Buddhism doesn't have to be attached to a particular political view, and I like it when it's not. I like to see a larger variety of different people, because the Buddhist perspective is not just one perspective. It covers life in general. And if people were able to understand this and go beyond the pegs that they put themselves in society, then I think the Buddha's message would be good for a lot more people. But we're kind of going a little bit off the topic, which is okay, I suppose. Yeah, probably could. But really, that's up to, the precepts are followed by individuals, right? And it's up to the individual to follow those precepts. It might be. But all of us have wrong view. So there's plenty of it to go around. There's plenty of it to go around. So there were two, going back to my transformation a little bit. As I got into my Buddhist practice, as I started to really kind of observe my mind, observe how the mind works, and start to understand how people work, I started to develop a feeling about the world. And the feeling about the world was encapsulated by two quotes that I heard from Ajahn Brahm that became epiphanies for me. Because I had always struggled against the world. Always, the world is horrible, the world needs to be changed, there needs to be justice, and this and that, and all these things happen in the world, and so somebody needs to do something about it. And that started to lessen. And then I would say the epiphany came when I heard these two quotes. The first quote being, "The Buddha did not change the world. He made peace with the conditions in it." And if you really think about that, if you study the suttas, you see that. The Buddha very, very, very rarely chastised anybody for anything. In terms of, he didn't say, you evil rich people, or you know, evil kings, or you this or you that or that. He gave basic teachings to say, if you'd like to be a good ruler, this is how you should be a good ruler. If you'd like to be a good person, this is how you should be a good person. This is how you should practice skillfully. He didn't, did he change the world in that he created a religion and, that millions of people practice? Yeah, if you consider that change in the world. But really, when we think of changing the world, when we think of like a utopia, world peace, all of these things, what is the one thing that really has to change for that to happen? And the answer is not one world government or some kind of world military or something that or there being no countries. That's not the answer. What has to change? When people say the world is horrible, what are they talking about? They're talking about human nature. It is human nature. Yes. Human nature has always been this way. It always will be this way. It is just the nature of a being that has greed, hatred, and delusion. One person, even the Buddha, cannot change this. The Buddha said himself, the Buddhas only lead the way. You have to follow the path. You have to put in the practice. You have to do it yourself. So what's wrong with the world? Why do we think that the world, there's something wrong with the world, or there's something wrong with human nature? Why do we want to change it? How do we think that we can even change it? The other quote that Ajahn Brahm uses that I love, and I think about this quote quite often, the quote is, suffering, or dukkha, is asking from the world what it can never give you. Think about that. Just the fact that you want to change the world means that you are creating your own suffering. That's pretty deep, isn't it? Is human nature genetic? I would say it's both genetic and environmental. There is a genetic component, but it's the cultures that create, that teach you. When you're an infant, you have this genetic capacity, right? But it's the culture itself that teaches you. Culture is men and women. Corporations, which a lot of people, you always hear a lot of Buddhists always say, those evil corporations, and this evil, what do they call it, consumerism, all these big evils in the world, right? It's all made of people. It's all human nature. It's all what people do. So, now, depending on the tradition, different things might be said. But in terms of the ancient Pali Suttas, the Buddha was pretty set in how he said that how somebody actually affects the world. And what he said was that basically the greatest gift that you can give the world is calming your own mind. When you practice, you are giving a gift of, well, also the Buddha says when you practice, when you follow, but the practice consists of following the precepts as much as you can, and the metta practice, and vipassana, samatha, all of that comes together. So when you practice, when you are not harming beings, you're not stealing from them, you're benefiting them in some way, you're helping them as you can, you are giving a gift of fearlessness to all beings. That those beings know that they have nothing to worry from you. They might live in a world, they might have a family, they might have family, friends, they don't trust anybody, their family, their friends are horrible to them. They know that you will never harm them in any way, by body, speech, or mind. This also works. I've seen this personally, and I don't know I have any other explanation for it. I think it also works with animals and on children too. You'd be surprised how many times I get, my job is working with children. Or at least it was up until a year ago, Child Protective Services. I've worked with hundreds of children over these many years. You'd be surprised what I would get was, my child doesn't like men usually. This person doesn't like strangers. But the kids sense something, right? Animals sense something. People sense something. They know that you are living rightly and that you will not harm them. So that is the greatest gift that you can give to the world. There's also a sutta called the Acrobat. And in the Acrobat, there's a master acrobat and a student acrobat. And the master acrobat goes, they're about to do these feats, right? Obviously these are death-defying feats. They could get harmed and all this. And so the master says, how about I will look after you and you will look after me? And this is a Buddha telling a parable. And the apprentice says, no, the right way to do it is, I will look after myself and you will look after yourself. And so that's what the Buddha is saying is, how you look after, and this is another quote, I'm connecting different sutta quotes from different suttas together in this. And another quote there is, and I believe this is from the Dhammapada, and it says, in taking care of yourself, you take care of others. In taking care of others, you take care of yourself. So if you want to have an effect on the world, if you want to bring a beneficial life to yourself and to others around you, this is the first step. This is what you do. You develop yourself. What is the teaching of the Buddha in a short sentence? Right? To not do any more unskillful deeds. To do skillful deeds. What's the word? To clean your mind, to brighten your mind. This is to get rid of the defilements in your mind. This is the teaching of the awakened ones. So, when you do this, not only do you have a better capacity to help other people, but you have the wisdom to understand exactly how to help other people in the right way. That's important. Because we can have the desire to help, and if we don't know how to help in the right way, we can do more harm than good. You can see this in your life. I'm sure you've had some kind of experience with this. And you can see it, I can see it in government, how there's like a young child dies, and everybody says, well, we have to do something about it. And how do we do something about it? We make a law. But then that law has unforeseen consequences. The law itself had good intentions behind it, but because of a lack of wisdom, it has these unforeseen circumstances that have hurt other people. This is what I mean as an example of when you have that wisdom, and the Buddha taught that wisdom and compassion go together. If you have compassion for all beings, that's good. But if you have wisdom to go with that compassion, that is true compassion. That is how you understand the true sufferings of others, with that wisdom. And, okay, let's see. Back up to where I was going here. Oh, yes. In helping others, you help yourself. So, I don't think that the Buddha ever said, you don't help other people. The Buddha never said that. What he did say, though, and I think the point is with that wisdom and that understanding, you have no expectations for what your actions will do. Right? What happens when we are driving and we let somebody in front of us, right? And then they don't wave to us, like thanks. We think, I let this person in, they won't even thank me. Or you go to a homeless person and you give them a sandwich, and they throw the sandwich away because they wanted money to do whatever they wanted to do with it. And you think, that homeless person, that punk, he couldn't even accept my gift, right? That's having an expectation of what your action, what response should occur from your action. That is, going back to that quote, right? Suffering is asking from the world what it can never give you. When you have those expectations attached to your actions, you are causing suffering for yourself. So, I like to counterbalance this talk, how I usually talk in this way, with a great poem. And the poem is called the Starfish Poem. In the Starfish Poem, there's an old man walking along the beach. And along the beach there's many, many, many hundreds of starfish. And he sees a young boy. And the young boy is throwing starfish back in the ocean. And the gist of the story, it's told in different ways, but the gist of the story is the old man goes up to the young boy and goes, "Why are you doing this? You're not making a difference. You're not helping." And at that point the boy is throwing a starfish in, and he goes, "It made a difference for that one." I think that is more of the right mindset in terms of when we talk about socially engaged Buddhism, when we talk about helping others. We know that you cannot change the world. It is the way it is. It was that way long before. If you know anything about history, there is so much that is going on today and that goes on throughout history. You can look back to ancient Rome and it's the same stuff happening. The same exact stuff. It is human nature is the same. It will be the same long after we're all dead. Only thing that we can do is to live a skillful life, perform skillful actions that are beneficial to ourselves and to others. That's all we can do. But it always starts with us. when I do the metta meditation, I often talk about how important it is to do metta for yourself first, or at least to include yourself in doing metta for all beings. It's extremely important to do that. And what I often use is the simile of the, as a child I flew a lot. I was in a lot of planes. So in my lifetime I've listened to probably at least 4 or 5 dozen safety talks on a plane. And when they talk about the oxygen dropping, the first thing they say is, if you have a child, secure your own mask first before securing the mask of your child. And if you think about that, it makes completely 100% logical sense. You are no good, you are no help to your child if you are passed out. You are no help to other people if you are not a help to yourself. You cannot have friendship with other people. You cannot, the traditional term is loving kindness. I'm not a big fan of that. It's really the best translation that I like is boundless friendliness, because you're having living in friendship with all beings. So if you can't have a friendship with yourself, how can you have friendship with all beings? If you can't help yourself, how can you help others? Helping yourself, going back to that quote from the Buddha? Taking care of yourself. In taking care of yourself, you take care of others. In taking care of others, you take care of yourself. It's cyclical. You are essentially doing both at the same time. That's the importance. And so there's nothing wrong with doing something like Bhikkhu Bodhi, creating that wonderful organization. There's nothing wrong with that as a Buddhist. Right? There's nothing wrong with helping your fellow man. Well, I think the concept is lost is in understanding your limits, knowing what you can do and what you can't do, and in doing so, lessening your suffering and other people's suffering as well. That's the important, I think the important message that I get across, that I'm attempting to get across in talking about this socially engaged Buddhism. And I've gone on for about a half hour. I think I've covered everything I wanted to talk about. So at this point, we could do questions and answers. We can discuss. So if anybody has anything they want to talk about regarding this topic, or we could do other Buddhist topics, it doesn't matter. We can discuss then. If not, we can head out for the night, one way or the other. I will say that, in my plan to become a monk, I do plan on going in the woods a lot and being by myself. I like doing that. However, I'd also like to work with veterans, and I'd like to work with prisoners. I think it's good to have a balance. I think it's good to have, that ability to be by yourself to practice, but also to work with other beings as well. Doing one or the other, I don't think has the same kind of effect. People join without witnessing. I might need some clarification on that. Oh, and Jim, by the way, I just missed your I found that my happiness is inversely proportional to my expectations of others and life. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. 100%. We put, we have these expectations. People should act this way on the road. People should act this way in the office. People should act this way. My children should act this way. This should happen. That should happen. And then it never goes that way. So and then we say, dang it. And that's where the agitation comes from. Oh, you mean witness like trying to talk to the person to get them to come? You mean like is that what you mean? Yeah, convert. Yeah. Well, that's Buddhism is famous for that. That's how we do it, right? I mean, there are some exceptions of not it being that way, but I'm the only Buddhist I know in my daily life, and I don't talk about it a lot outside of the internet. But people know. They know who I am. They know what I do. They see that I am calm. They see that I am peaceful. They see me meditate. They know what it's all about. And sometimes the ones who want to maybe question and say, well, maybe I want to get a piece of that, they know they can talk to me. That's called living. What you are doing is, or what I am trying to do, what you do in this situation is you're living the practice. You're not verbally, you are not presenting it in any other way other than this is how I live. Because living the practice is the best marketing. It's the best it's the best way to show people that there is something to this practice. That there is a way for that peace and happiness. And you can do something about it. I see Jim typing, so I'm just waiting to see what he's typing. I don't know if you use any the chat bubbles, but I prefer the chat bubbles. I don't like the chat box. I think it comes from the old style. I'm a video gamer from a long time ago. And I always loved the chat bubbles from back in the day. So I always use the chat bubbles, and the chat bubbles also allows you to see when people are typing. So, okay, so I guess if there's nothing else, then we can end here. Thank you all for coming and participating in Dhamma. Until next time, Sukhi Hantu, may you be happy, and may your practice flourish.